Hi everybody, welcome back. Hope you're all keeping well. Had a user reach out to me asking how to operate a DC layout. He was looking at one of my old videos. So this is going to be a video just looking at DC operations. So I've got two loops of track set up on the kitchen table with a couple of points between them. So let's go out, have a look at it and see how we operate it. So here we are at the kitchen table where we all started with our layouts, probably having a circuit of track on the table. So I've got two loops. I've got a crossover between the loops, and then I've got a siding coming off the inner loop. So let's get Thomas and Percy here going around. You can see they're quite happily going around the track. I've got my gauge master controller here. They're going around the loops quite happily. But what happens if we want to get Thomas onto the inner track? I'm going to pull the camera in closer and we'll have a look at that. So here we are. We're going to take Thomas and bring him up onto this track, and Percy is already in this track. Just a reminder of the theory how it all works. So we have a DC controller here. There's two controllers in this one controlling both tracks. The power comes in through one rail, up through the wheels, through the motor making it spin, back down the other wheels, into the track, and back to the controller. So that's how it works. We have the points here, which when I flick over, will send the train over onto this track. So I need to flick both points, like so. I'm going to put the power on the outer track, which is Thomas, and then we'll see what happens. Of course, that's no good, because Percy's moving as well. So the power from this track is going through here and powering this track as well, making Percy move. So we need to put Percy into the siding so then we can bring Thomas onto this track. So let's do that first. So we'll move Thomas back out of the way, flick the points back, and we'll move Percy over. Flick, point, change the direction. Percy's up there. Flick the point back. Now he's isolated in there, so if I turn his controller, he doesn't move. If I flick the point, he moves. So that point is keeping this track isolated, so he doesn't move. Now we can flick these points to bring Thomas across the other track. So first off, we must make sure that this controller on this track is off, which I have it off. Flick the points. So this will allow the power coming into this track to travel up through there to bring Thomas across. There we go. Thomas is now on the line. We can flick the points and we can use the other controller now to control Thomas. So you can see how it be a little bit complicated working DC, because obviously with DCC you don't have to worry about that because the track is just all powered and it's the chip that controls the loco. Now the other way to do this is if you have an isolated section. So let's bring Thomas back onto the other track, and you can see there, because I flicked the point, the two controllers are conflicting with each other and it will cause a short, and eventually it will cut out because you've got the two powers coming into the one. So we'll bring Thomas across, flick the points, we'll bring Percy back out on the main line. Like so now we have Percy going around and Thomas going around again. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to stop Percy over here. Okay, switch his controller off. Now the other way in to do this is to wire in isolated sections. So he's on a piece of track over here. So to simulate that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the track. So what you would do is you would have isolating fish plates on the piece of track, and you'd put a cut in the track, or if you've got isolating plates, fish plates either side, you don't need to cut the track, but you just need to wire a switch in to power this. So you'd run a wire from here where it's live, through a switch, back onto this track. So you can cause this piece of track to go dead, and then it's completely isolated from the rest. So Percy's sitting there now, he's isolated, which means we can switch off his power. We can put Thomas into reverse, flick over the points, and now Thomas can go onto the other track if he doesn't stall on the points. And you see, once I flick that over, his controller has no power going through to it, so it stops. And now we can put on the other controller and he can move. But of course we've got to remember, Percy is on that bit of track over there, which is isolated. So he can't get to that. I hope that explains the basics of swapping trains from one track to the other. So you either have to take your loco, put it in a siding so it's isolated, so you can switch over between circuits, or you have to have an isolated section wired in, which is a piece of track, fish plates either end, a wire soldered onto it, going through a switch to another piece of track, so you can make that section dead, so you can put a loco in there, disconnect it, and then you can move stuff across. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It can be a little bit more wiring involved with DC to make those isolated sections. And you can make those isolated sections wherever you want on your layout. When you're operating the layout, you can figure out where you want to put these points, how you want to operate it. So that's how you get one loco from one side into the other circuit. So what I'll do now is I'll get one of these points and just give you a closer look at it. So this is a simple point. This is an insul frog point because this bit up here is insulated. I'll link a video down below that goes into more details on points. But this is just a simple point that you'd get with any train set. It's got blades there that moves to move the train. This is obviously a left-hand point because it goes off to the left. So with the blades in this position here, the train is going to carry straight on. And if we flick it over, the train's going to carry on out to the left. Likewise, when it's like this, the power that's coming through here is going up through the blade and carrying on up the track. If you flick it over, the power is then going that way, out there. So with it flicked over like that, is actually isolating this section here. So this is how you can isolate trains with the points. So obviously, if this is a siding, you got the power here going up here, you flick it over, there's no longer a connection there going out to here, so there's no power unless you have a separate power supply wired in. So that's just the basics on the points you get with a train set and how they work. So I'll link a video down below that goes into more details on the different types of points. So this is the original track configuration here I think the subscriber was asking about. Just to point out something else I've got in here, this is a crossover here. So that's just a piece of track that allows one line to cross over the other. It doesn't switch it. So if we pull this wagon here, it just goes straight across the track. And it is wired to take the power from here right across to there, and the power from here across to there. So there's no wiring involved, you just put it in place. You just have to be careful that if you've got something crossing, you don't have a train coming the other way that's going to go into it. So that's just the crossover. Quite handy if you just want to go over there and have another point like so. So it's going into the station there. So you can get these little crossovers just to do that. There's no wiring involved to them. They're just simple. So there we go. There's a little bit about DC operations. One other thing with the wiring, see when you have it set up like this temporary, it's always best to have the power supply plugged in before the point. So in this sort of area here and this area here. So it's before the point. That'll just give you much better running. Obviously, if it's a more permanent solution, you can wire up all the bits of track separately using a bus wire. That will give you far more reliable running than just relying on one feed going into one track. So I hope I covered that. Just remember, if you're crossing trains over tracks, you can't have both power supplies on at the same time. It will cause a short. So you just use one to bring it across. Have your other loco on here in a siding or an isolated section. And then as you build your layout, you can decide where you want more isolating sections just to help with the running value or the play value of it. And that's it. If you've got any other questions, put them down in the comments. So there we go, everybody. How you operate a DC layout, just some basics there. What I'll do is I'll pop a picture up here of an isolating fish plate. It's just a little plastic fish plate so you know what it is. So don't forget to give me the old thumbs up, subscribe if you're new here. Any questions or comments, put them down below. Big thank you as always to my channel members and patrons whose names will be scrolling here. I'll pop another video here and here with the subscribe button in the middle. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.